Girl, you only wasting time. Hope your wedding bells don't chime on your car.
Hello, greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey and from me. Mickey has decided she wants to be on this chaise longue today. She said she did not want to be on that sofa anymore. She wanted a change of scenery, and so she is getting one. It also has to be said that I think Mickey might be actually coming into season. So that could also be a very good reason for Mickey preferring this sofa, but I'm not sure about that. So, and I don't want to gross everybody out. But anyway, Mickey, I think, is very happy here. Well, we've had certainly an eventful few days of it, because of course, we have just had the 100th anniversary of Prince Philip's death the other day. And we had all of the royals out in force doing their bit to commemorate Prince Philip's life. We had the Queen naming a rose after him, which I think is a very sweet thought. We had Prince Charles saying nice things about him. Princess Anne, of course, Princess Anne being Prince Philip in skirts, not only says nice things about her father, but then makes the point, well, it's time to move on. In the most wonderfully practical way. We also had Prince Edward being interviewed, and Prince Edward was then asked about Harry and Meghan. And I thought his riposte was absolutely spot on. Because, you know, he said, well, families are families, and I'm keeping out of it. And he handled it beautifully with decorum. Because I think what a lot of people miss is it's really very difficult to come to terms with losing a loved one for whatever reason. And B, if that loved one that you are losing is actually still alive, in some ways it makes it much more painful and complicated. And thirdly, and very importantly, the royal family is giving a message to the world, which is that they are not going to handle miscreant members of their family with the harshness and brutality that Meghan has handled her family. Think about it for a second. Their softly approach is much more humane, much more Christian, much more civilized, and much more decent. And I think you ought to bear that in mind. You know, I think an awful lot of people think, oh, this couple is so gross, we've had enough of them, you know, just leave us alone, and why doesn't the Queen just shut them up? Well, the Queen could just shut them up. But there are more civilized ways and gentler ways of handling miscreants. And there is no doubt that Harry and Meghan are both miscreants. So, having said that, we have also had yesterday a wonderful demonstration of what royalty and regality are like when they are in motion. Because, you know, at the moment we have a visit from the President and his wife of America. And yesterday, Catherine Cambridge and Jill Biden went to a school because, of course, remember, Jill Biden was a school teacher, and they went to school, and just beautiful, just the way the whole thing was wonderfully executed. I mean, with such grace and style. by Catherine Cambridge. And it has to be said, Jill Biden also was gracious. And we need to give credit where it is due. I'm neither pro nor contra anything to do with American politics, I hasten to add, because I know there's a huge dispute and a huge sort of divide in America. And I don't want to get involved with any of that. Please, please, please. I get it enough from the various members of my family who live in America and my friends, half of whom are in one camp and the other half in the other, each sniping at the other, and I try to keep well out of it. And just as how I thought that Melania Trump was not given credit when it was due, I also think we should give credit to Jill Biden where it is due. And she was really extremely gracious and exemplary. So having said all of that, let us see what else we have on offer. Because, of course, Prince Edward was asked about the dreaded duo. And the dreaded duo are still at it. But before we get into that, may I also point out that the Queen has honoured all of the Duke of Edinburgh's closest aides. Absolutely everybody. The pallbearers, the soldiers who took part in the funeral procession, his private secretary, his press secretary, everybody has been given an honour. The demise honour has been given by those who participated in the funeral. The last time demise honours were given were in 2002 when Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and Princess Margaret died. And now they have been given, now that the Duke of Edinburgh has died. And other members of the household have been given various honours through the Royal Victorian Order, which is in the gift of the Queen, has nothing to do with the government. Nobody can have any say, only she has the say as to who she is going to make a member or whatever it is, knight, dame of the Royal Victorian Order. And so we've had all of that going on, which has been the positive face of royalty, even amidst sadness. It has been the positive face of royalty. And of course, we had the Queen, you know, with her sweet commemorative motions. And, you know, several people have commented, she's really so tiny and so old. And it is really cruel that towards the end of her life, she's having to deal with all of this fallout from a certain couple. So, if I may, I will now plunge right in. Annalise Hamilton says, Lady C, how much I enjoy your excellent analysis of the terrible duo. Thank you very much. I wonder what you think about what Gyles Brandreth said on TV, that Prince Philip was heartbroken with the mess the terrible duo and Andy Pandy have created in the royal family. Gyles Brandreth knew Prince Philip very well. He certainly did. I know Gyles, and he certainly knew him very well. So it could be said that Prince Philip's end was hastened by this whole mess. Well, whether it was hastened or not, my dear, it certainly was coloured in the most adverse way. Gyles Brandreth says he knows Prince Philip would not have approved of the name Lilibet. Could this be the thing that will get them totally ostracised, sans titles, money, and no claim to the throne? Well, to take the answer in various parts, Prince Philip was very upset about the fact that Prince Andrew has been roped in to an ongoing saga that includes actually far bigger names than his, including former President Clinton. Let's remember that. And the feeling in palace circles is that the New York Attorney General has been very mischievously misrepresenting the level of cooperation that the British royal household has offered on behalf of Prince Andrew, because you need to remember, in America, these attorneys general are elected officials. They play to the gallery. They are not going to have, unless of course they're completely straight and honourable, and regrettably many of them aren't. So they are not going to play with a straight bat if they can get personal advantage out of the situation. And this, I fear, has coloured an awful lot of what has gone on with regard to Prince Andrew, because Prince Andrew, through the palace and through his representatives, has offered to give a statement that would completely clarify everything. But the New York Attorney General has wanted to be able to get in there and create a sensation and make a mess and run with the dirty ball. And quite frankly, I don't blame the palace for taking the view that they are not going to collude with mischief making by American politicians or political appointees. Because remember, an American Attorney General in whatever state, even though he is in a legal capacity, by the mere fact that he is elected, is also a political appointee. So let's be clear about that aspect of it. Prince Andrew has been accused of no crime. By the girl's own admission, there was no crime. She also claims, how truthfully is something else again, that she was paid $15,000, according to her, for what, shall we say, was the encounter with Prince Andrew. Well, I know that people who get paid are not slaves. Slaves don't get paid. So, but I don't want to get roped into all of this. I am just stating the bald facts insofar as they are evident where the Prince Andrew business is concerned. And of course it upset his father. It would upset any father. And whether Prince Andrew was well advised or ill advised, I think he was very stupid to give the interview he gave to Emily Maitlis. But nobody has ever accused Prince Andrew of being a rocket scientist. So that's Prince Andrew taken care of. Harry and Meghan are a horse of completely different colours, both of them. They're two horses, actually, of completely different colours. And both of them have, in their own ways, behaved absolutely appallingly. And I said it at the time when Prince Philip was ill and in hospital. I had certain information that I imparted in a measured way. And that Prince Philip was extremely distressed by it. And Gyles is absolutely right. And Gyles is impeccably connected, I've got to tell you. If Gyles says it, you can be sure it is so. Gyles is not one of those hot air merchants that proliferate as royal correspondents. He is nothing like that. Gyles is a proper, fully paid up member of the establishment with genuine connections. He's not a guest merchant. He's not like the werewolf who attacked me on that royal programme and thought he was making such a fool of me, and he made a fool of himself. And I'm not referring to Philip Schofield either. I'm referring to something called Larscombe or whatever his name was. So, you know, a whole load of jokes, half of them are. I mean, they wouldn't know their way from here to the lavatory unless they were led by the nose, much less anything else. Guesswork, and they're all in the same circle, bouncing off ideas off each other and da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. Pathetic creatures. Gyles is not like that. So, that's one part of the question answered. And now, if I may, I will look at the question to see what the other parts are. Well, I do not think, in fairness to either Meghan or Harry, that they actually hastened Prince Philip's end by very much, if at all. I mean, he had been very ill for a very long time, and it is actually quite likely that if he hadn't died, then he would have died a few days or a few weeks later. He had been hanging on by the skin of his teeth for an awfully long time, I've got to tell you. So I don't think, in fairness to them, that we can lay that at their doorstep. What we can lay is the misery that they made of his last days, and not only of his, of the family's last days with Prince Philip. You know, people want a nice death. People want a clean death. Whether it's a pet or a loved one, you want your loved ones to have good deaths if you are decent people. If you have no feelings, if you're psychopathic, if you're heartless, if you are really the lowest of the low, then you don't care what sort of death anybody has. But compassionate people even want their enemies to have good deaths, which is why executions, when they take place, are not grotesque, bizarre, and painful things the way they used to be. That's even why the guillotine was created by Dr. Guillot, to make death cleaner and easier and actually less painful. So even with enemies, if you have any decency whatsoever, you want people, even when they have committed horrendous crimes, to have as good a death as possible. Harry and Meghan made sure that Prince Philip was deprived of this. Harry and Meghan made sure that not only was Prince Philip deprived of this, but so were all of his loved ones who cared about their father, their grandfather, their husband, their cousin. All of them ended up having Prince Philip's death sullied by Harry and Meghan's conduct. I think we need to bear this in mind, because this is a very important point. Another important point is the name Lilibet. Yes, Prince Philip would have been beyond horrified that Harry, his grandson, his beloved grandson, would have defiled Prince Philip's wife, beloved wife, and Harry's supposedly beloved grandmother by effectively making a vestment out of her private correspondence. I mean, what Harry has done in figurative terms is taken the Queen's private letters, printed them onto a fabric, had Meghan, and with Meghan's cooperation, and doubtless at Meghan's instigation, and doubtless her idea, made a public vestment out of her private letters. This is a rape of privacy. This is a ravishment of sensibility. There are no polite ways of getting around it. It is nasty, nasty, nasty. And you can guarantee, if Gyles gets on television, as he did, and says it, it has the full backing of everyone Gyles knows. I've been to Gyles's parties. He has practically everybody who's of any renown in England at his parties. And I'm not only referring to politicians and public figures, I'm referring to members of the royal family, but I'm not going to mention any names. I'm just making the point that if Gyles said it, you can believe it. Okay? Next question. Geety Oracle. Question for Lady C. If Harry's BBC lawsuit goes through, are we going to see the Queen, his 95-year-old granny, being required to attend the court as a witness? Well, my dear, the very picture of it is laughable. No. In Britain, it is the Crown versus whatever. The Queen is the Crown. The Crown is the Queen. The Queen cannot testify in her own courts because she is the embodiment of the law. She can't be called to court. She can't testify in court. There is no possibility of the Queen being able to testify. Let us see what happens there, because the BBC have not withdrawn their statement that the Queen did not know or approve of Lilibet as a name for that child. They have not backed down, nor has the palace withdrawn their statement. So let's be very clear about what's going on here. It's what in the vernacular you call a Mexican standoff. Let's see if Harry is going to issue proceedings against the BBC. First of all, for something that's not defamatory. Secondly, for something that will end up causing a great deal of trouble. And thirdly, let us remember that the palace went to the trouble of giving that disclaimer to the national broadcaster, notwithstanding the fact that there have been recent difficulties between the BBC and the royal family and the royal household. There is absolutely no doubt that they chose to go to the national, I'm emphasizing it, broadcaster. This has the stamp of officialdom all over it. Now, I have mentioned before, and I'm going to mention again because it's really important. To those of you who do not know how these things work, there is no way that that statement would have been put out without it being sanctioned at the absolutely highest level. And I will also not name who would have A, sanctioned it, and B, given it. I'm not going to mention any names, because there are certain times when it is better to not mention names. But I can tell you there is little doubt in my mind, in fact there's no doubt at all, that it came from X at the behest of Y. And they have not backed down, and they're not backing down. Let's see what happens. Let's see if this was all bluster on that blunderbuss's part, and if he's going to shoot yet another load of pellets, stray and sort of in the most ridiculous way at a passing target, making sure he doesn't hit it, because of course he's saving face. Let's see what happens. Let's see if he really does issue proceedings, and if he issues proceedings, how far it goes. Because I have to say, my information is that people are mightily fed up with Harry and Meghan and their tricks. Next question. Starlight 556. Some of these names are just so entertaining. What is the agenda behind keeping them in the news constantly? Something is up with that. Well, the immediate agenda is, it's all actually in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story, for what it's worth. And some things don't change, they simply get added to, like the fact that a human being stands on his or her feet. As you get older in life, you don't start to stand on your arms or head. You still stand on your feet. Your feet may grow, they may change, you may wear different size shoes, but the basics remain the same. And this is absolutely true of the Harry and Meghan story. It is absolutely set in stone if you know what is going on, what the characters are about, what their personalities are about, what their disturbances are about, because we are dealing with real disturbances and really disturbing people and really disturbing situations. The name of the game, as I have said before, and I'm going to say it again, the name of the game is fame and fortune. There is no doubt in my mind that Harry genuinely believed, whether he does know or not is another matter altogether, but he certainly believed that Meghan truly loved him. There is no doubt in my mind, having seen the way Meghan functions, and I could be wrong, I could be doing her a grave injustice, but I think Meghan loves everything that Harry represented and everything that he could bring to her table. But that Meghan, like all opportunists par excellence, and all a very egotistical people, and all people who display the degree of narcissistic characteristics that she displays, know that they don't have any incentive to put their fate in the hands of anybody else. That means that she needs to be in control of every relationship, every situation, every person, so that when she's ready to skedaddle, she can skedaddle, preferably with bags laden with gold. There was no way she was going to be able to skedaddle with any bags of gold had she remained a working member of the British royal family. I think she also is very limitedly imaginative. I think I've seen opportunists like her time and again in my life. And I'll tell you one thing about somebody who's utterly self-centered. The world stops where their nose begins, as far as they're concerned. They don't see the big picture. You and I and anybody who's healthy, we may see ourselves sort of for what we are. I mean, there is a school of thought that nobody actually ever sees himself or herself really as they truly are, but some of us get closer to the reality than others. And healthy people look outwards. Narcissistic people, very self-centered people, very egotistical people, it stops where the skin stops. That's their boundary. Everything else it's out there. It's instead of them meeting the world at large and connecting and colliding with the world at large, what they do is they are like soldiers looking through a parapet or in a tank looking through a sort of hole. And as the tank goes through life, it likes that, so it will grab it because the tank has pincers and can grab. It doesn't see the big picture. People like that never, ever see the big picture. No matter how bright, no matter how imaginative they are, they never see the picture, the big picture, because they can't get beyond themselves. They are encased in their skins in more ways than one. Those of us who are healthy, we can see way beyond ourselves. We can see way into the distance. We have sometimes a very huge range of vision because we are not obsessed with ourselves. Ourselves are in their proper place in the grand scheme of things. Not, in my view, with the Meghans of this world. And one of the things that anybody who has been involved with a supreme egotist, a narcissist, a sociopath, anybody with a seriously disordered personality has as a perplexity and a bewilderment is the complete self-centeredness of these individuals. Because you have to scale everything down in a way that is impossible for a healthy person to scale things down. And that's how they function naturally. So with her agenda, as far as I can see, and I could be doing her a grave injustice and I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong and I don't think I'm doing her a grave injustice. Her agenda is all about attention, control, fame and fortune. Some people think she's being played by the Democratic Party in America. I don't think so. I think if there becomes a coincidental self-interest, they will all be in bed together. And I'm sure that she has gone out of her way to reach out, because she's such a reacher-outer. She's always reaching out. But one of the keys to success isn't only that you don't always reach out, but that you let people reach out to you. When somebody's always reaching out, it's actually not a mark of success. It's a mark of failure. I just make that point for what it's worth. I do not think for a second that she is a major player, and I'm suspicious that she will ever become a major player in party politics in America. I know that that has been her ambition, but I think she has made so many mistakes and she has sullied herself to such an extent already that I don't think it's going to happen. I could be wrong, but I don't see it happening. Too many people know that the Empress not only is her vestment, her new clothes are not only made of hot air, but they're made of flatulent hot air. They stink to high heaven. Too many people already know that. And this is before the Republican Party and her opponents in the Democratic Party, because remember, there are always opponents if you have political ambitions within your own party. That's before they get unleashed on her. No, I think, my dear, if you think we've seen anything yet, we've seen nothing. The bloodletting that will take place. It will be very entertaining if it happens. I don't think it's going to happen. I think she is too inconsequential, too limited, very ambitious, ruthlessly so, but not sufficiently intelligently so, and also too egotistical to conceal the joins, or maybe too dumb to conceal the joins. There's no doubt that she has some intelligence, but how much is open to question? I mean, some people say she's fearsomely bright. I think she certainly has a lot of synapses going on in the brain. How bright that ultimately is something else again, because I'm not sure that she actually achieves her objective. On the one hand, she does, because she's after fame and fortune. She's got a lot less fame and a lot more infamy than I'm sure she wanted. And I do not for a second believe, and my information is, that all these vast sums that are being bandied about as to what they have earned are yet more hot air to go along with the hot air that originates from her mouth. And her mouth, figuratively speaking, is a place where the orifice upon which I am sitting is sighted. Next question. Lynn Scott. Someone pointed out in the replies that Prince Harry bristled at being called Has, as that was Megsy Baby's private name for him. That wouldn't surprise me. You know, a lot of people know how to dish it out but don't know how to take it. You know, one rule for the goose, another rule for the gander. It goes along with the territory. Perhaps it is time we all call him Has, and Has's wife. That would stick in their craw. Hubby wants to know if PR, as in amid, scabies, stands for persona repugnant. Well, I think it does stand for persona repugnant, but they don't think so. They think it stands for public relations. And isn't it interesting that poor Thomas Markle is relegated to the scrap heap for not betraying any secrets about his daughter, incidentally, and there are plenty, I am assured, that he could reveal, but for having attempted to maintain his dignity. of course, if Samantha is to be believed, that was the pretext upon which Meghan actually plunged the knife in, telling her father that if she was not chosen over her half-brother and half-sister by him, that she was going to dump him. That has the ring of truth, because she did dump him. And it's sort of very bizarre to dump a father because he was trying to maintain his dignity that she could have helped to protect and didn't. Well, repugnant, yes. I actually think their demeanor is personally repugnant. And they are so delusional and so vain and so out of touch with the realities of life and of everyday people and of people's ability to see through their claptrap, that they actually think that they are as wonderful, and we ought to believe that they are as wonderful as they claim to be, despite all the evidence to the contrary. We are really being subjected in real time to the evocation of Shakespeare, a Greek tragedy, and a Phaedo farce all rolled into one, with dashes of the Royal Truman Show thrown in for good measure. She and he are writing the script, and we, the audience, are simply disagreeing with the permutations and the declamations and the proclamations. It's really interesting because really we are relegated to being, they hoped, silent witnesses and admiring witnesses, instead of which they have an ever-increasing body of people who say, excuse me, this is rubbish. I mean, it's like a really bad play where people start to boo, and the worse the play becomes is the more they boo. But you have these vain playwrights and actors on the stage, and they are both playwrights and actors in this case, thinking, oh well, we'll just continue. They're going to be people in the gods, or people in the bleachers, or people in row 27. There'll be people who'll agree with us and think we're wonderful. And an ever-increasing number of people think, get off the stage, you dreadful creeps. Christine M. says, here in the US, they're reporting that the Queen approved the name. She didn't, according to my information. She didn't. I even heard someone reporting that due to the baby being an American citizen, she could be Queen of England as well as President of the US. Oh, yes, my dear. And she is also going to have apples growing on lilac trees. Both at the same time. Oh, I need to read this again. I even heard someone reporting that due to the baby being an American citizen, she could be Queen of England as well as President of the US. Both at the same time. Insane. About 8 exclamation marks. I can't listen to the mainstream news here. It's mostly fiction. Well, if that is what is being propagated in the television news in America and in the mainstream news, it is lies, 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 and more lies. It is not possible for that baby to become Queen of England unless she marries her first cousin when he becomes King of England, because In England, you can't marry an uncle. So she can't marry Prince William. She'd have to wait to marry the next generation. I don't see that happening anytime soon. She can't become Queen of England on her own and in her own right, unless William, George, Charlotte, Louis, Harry and Archie are all somehow magically erased. I mean, you know, there was a movie many years ago, Arsenic and Old Lace, with Alec Guinness, where this crazed, very distant relation of a duke decided that he wanted to accede to the dukedom and proceeded to bump off all of his relations. Well, that's the only way that that child can become Queen of England. Lily. Queen Lily. I don't think it's going to wash. Also, the child can't be Queen of England and President of the United States at the same time either. It doesn't work. So all of this is rubbish. It's nonsense. All of this is yet more puff pieces put out by Harry, Meghan and their ministers of propaganda, sunshine sacks and amid scabies. I mean, these people must really think that the public is far more stupid than the public is. I mean, it is really offensive that this sort of rubbish can be written about and sold and purveyed. It's just absolutely an insult to people's intelligence. APGX says, for those of us who have had the misfortune of being involved with a narcissist, will be of one voice. Recollections will always differ. You can say that again. I've never met a narcissist that wasn't a pathological liar. My mother, if she told you good morning, you better check to see that it wasn't late at night. I don't believe a word that comes out of those certain people's mouths. Not a word. There is nothing that they say that is grounded in reality. There are little bits of reality, and they're sufficiently in touch with aspects of reality to come up with 3%, 5%, even 20% of reality. The rest of it, sorry, very unrealistic. Very unrealistic. These people do not have perceptions the way healthy people do. They do not see situations. They do not see people. They do not see events the way healthy people do. They are incapable of seeing things the way healthy people do. Incapable. You need to get that under your belt. Incapable. I have noticed, certainly with my mother, and I have also observed with Meghan and Harry, that their version of the truth is always very self-serving. And the 2 or 3% that seems to be grounded in reality usually fits in with their agenda, which is fame, fortune, domination, control, and, to those who disagree, spite. Spite. People like that, very spiteful. In my opinion, I could be doing them a grave injustice, but I am going off my observations of their conduct. Barbara M. says, Harry's wife hasn't suddenly transformed. She must have left a lifelong trail of havoc. How have we heard nothing? Wonder if we'll ever learn more about her past. Well, my dear, you clearly have not read Meghan and Harry, the real story. Otherwise, you would know that, yes, she has left a trail of havoc, and that a lot of it has been reported in that book. What Meghan has always done, however, is she has chosen her victims wisely. Do you remember when she allegedly said that she was only interested in meeting Harry if he was nice? Meghan likes them sweet and malleable. My therapist, Basil, used to say, sharks always like sweet meat. She likes them malleable. Sharks don't like having to tear each other to bits. Not when they can feast on sweet meat. They're on the hunt. They're not going to be attacking each other when they can actually be focusing on the sea lion or the handsome 6'4" guy swimming in the sea. That's the reality. She has created havoc. But you know, one of the dynamics of very egotistical people and very narcissistic people, and in my view, Meghan's conduct leads me to believe that she is very narcissistic. Could be wrong, could be doing her grave injustice. I need to say that for legal reasons, but I don't think I am. I'm going off her conduct. So, if I'm misinterpreting it, I'm misinterpreting it because the conduct she has presented is what is causing the misinterpretation. So it's not my fault that I'm misinterpreting it. It's her fault that she is delivering the messages that lead one to misinterpret it. Let's be clear about that for legal reasons. I observed with my mother, to put it this way, that in her 20s and 30s, and my mother was 22 years older than me, 21 years and 9 months older than me. And I have a very good memory going all the way back to early childhood. My earliest memory is on my second birthday, when Hurricane Charlie hit Jamaica. My next memory is of when I was 2 years and 4 months old, and I picked up my sister Phoebe out of the cot and brought her down into the dining room, and Mummy, her maternity nurse, Starridge, and Daddy were having breakfast or lunch, I don't remember which it was, and they absolutely freaked because I had the baby in my arms. So I think I have a pretty good memory, and I remember Mummy in her 20s and 30s, mid-30s, was very captivating, charming, very sweet and obliged, but sweet is the wrong word. She was very entertaining, very decorous, very beautifully dressed, very glamorous, and very apparently cooperative. And, you know, marvellous person, marvellous. I remember a friend of hers saying, oh, everybody loves Gloria. She was 34 at the time when Helen Duncan said it. Oh, everybody loves Gloria. Well, by the time she was 40, she had discovered that she didn't need charm. She had discovered a taste for the raw exercise of power. That she didn't need charm anymore. What she used for charm was, she didn't need it. So she embarked thereafter on a reign of terror that it became ever increasingly vicious, because this is what the progression of narcissism is all about. They're into power, they're into control, they are into having everybody else with their foot on your head. That's the name of their game. And when they progress to a certain stage in life and feel confident enough, their supreme contempt for everybody becomes apparent. That doesn't mean that at various times and in various ways, shapes and forms, they don't have allies, because they always do have allies, because they always need allies. They always need somebody to be giving them succor, or as the psychological term is, supply. There's always somebody for them to dupe, and people will be duped, and they're very good at duping people. But the point is, as they get older and more successful and more established and more secure, they dispense with a lot of the charm. They just wield the whip, figuratively. Wait for it. It's gonna come. Wait for it. It's gonna come. Lynn Schmeiser-Hudson says, Lady C, your outfit today is even more stunning than usual. I think she's referring to the last video. Today is very pedestrian, as you will notice, but I rather like sometimes being pedestrian. When I first heard the baby's name, I was reeling with the inappropriate impertinence of it, and was sickened by the sycophantic fawning of much of the US press, reconciliation quotes, olive branch quotes, etc. As you well said, the name carries many layers. Do you think Ms. Markle could actually be so deluded as to think naming their baby the Queen's special pet name would ensure that she and Hubs aren't stripped of their titles? That's an interesting take on it, my dear. That's a very interesting take on it. Well, I don't think Meghan functions on only one level. Most people don't. And I suspect that Meghan functions, as most of us do, on several levels. And somebody who displays the characteristics that she does will function on a far greater multitude of levels with far greater disparity than more integrated personalities like you and me. We will function on far fewer levels, because the core of our being is more solid, it's more integrated. This is what integrity is all about. I would not be surprised, because she is extremely grandiose, that at the very moment that she understood that she was slapping that old woman in the face. How dare you think that you own royal? Well, I'm showing you now, you silly old woman, that not only don't you own royal, you don't even own your nickname Lilibet either. There, that's shown you. At the very moment she thinks that, she also thinks, because people of her personality type have made a study of what works. They look at what people do and they think, oh, that works, and they figure out why it works, and they incorporate it into their bag of tricks. It's not heartfelt. It doesn't spring from within. It is yet another cloak to put on as they sail through life in the sunshine, in the rain, in the wind, with the snow, whatever. Whipping on, taking off, whipping on, taking off, whipping on, blah, 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 coats. One mask after the other, to put it in another way and mix my metaphors completely. But I want you to get the point. She, having done that, will have also figured out, I'm sure, because she's not stupid, that she would be able to spin it, and doubtless did to the dolt, that it's an honour and we're honouring your grandmother. Yeah. Like Glenn Close honoured the bunny. Great honour. Boil, baby, boil. But I'm sure that she, on some level, it occurred to her, well, she might think it. I could be wrong, I could be doing her grave injustice, the thought might never have crossed her mind. But if she has any intelligence, I think it did cross her mind. We'll present it as an honour. We'll present it as an honour. And certainly our followers will always believe it's an honour. But I'm pretty sure that she also thought, I know it's not an honour. And last question is from Tisha, USA. It is very telling that Meghan Markle's own uncle has publicly stated she is a quote-unquote prima donna with a chip on her shoulder. Enough said. Do I agree? Yes, I do. I think I quote him in my book. That is Michael Markle. He was an accredited diplomat who seems to have been a CIA operative. He is the one who organised for her to do that internship in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. And he was really surprised, as were all of the other members of her family with whom she had always got along, that none of them was asked to the wedding. And of course they have had to figure out why she would have completely blanked them. And it's self-evident why she blanked them. They weren't good enough for her any longer. She'd moved up in the world and left them behind. But you see, this is where a narcissist and an egotist and people with sociopathic tendencies make their mistakes. Because they don't really have ordinary feelings, and they can only enact feelings. And they use emotion to get from A to C, and you're the vehicle that takes them there. But they don't really relate to you emotionally. It wouldn't have occurred to her that she was actually building up massive trouble for herself. She wanted to conceal her past, and has done a very good job of it, I've got to tell you. There are all sorts of things in her past that I know about, that you don't know about. They have been buried deep in the jungle, encased in cement, rather like Jimmy Hoffa. And I think she tried to do that with her family. You see what I mean about when somebody is so self-centered that everything stops where their nose begins? No imagination where being found out is concerned. It's a form of stupidity. It's not necessarily intellectual stupidity. It is because they lack something within, and therefore they don't function the way other sentient beings function. They can't put themselves in your shoes. They can steal your attributes. They can fake your techniques. They can slip on your mask. They can't feel what you're feeling. And so they get it wrong time and again. Now, my mother was very clever because she would keep her trap shut. Meghans is perpetually open, catching flies. Meghan is careless. Maybe she's not as clever as Mummy was. But you had to really know the beast you were dealing with to get a handle on Mummy, except if you were a stranger, when it was immediately apparent. Because that's the other thing with people like that. It's those who are completely disconnected from them who think, wow, gosh, there's something wrong with that person. That doesn't add up. The more involved you get emotionally, is the more they are able to dupe you. So if you're close to them, you can be a complete idiot in the palm of their hand, even if you're not a true idiot. It's called narcissistic bewilderment. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and keep the questions coming in. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.